let me just start by thanking you all for the chance to be here. I'll spend a few minutes talking about what Karen Polito and I have been up to, and then I was told there's some questions you guys have you want to ask me. As long as they don't have anything to do with whether or not Russia's investigating me, I'm happy to hear what's on your mind. So I really feel a little odd speaking to you all on Karen Polito's home turf here in Worcester. I'm going to do everything I possibly can not to embarrass her. But this really is a part of the Commonwealth that she and I have a tremendous amount of affection for. Hers is built into the fact that she grew up here. Mine is built into the fact that I've had such a great opportunity to get to know so many people throughout central Massachusetts and Worcester County generally. And you might all be pleased to know that on my way today from Fitchburg, where I spoke at the luncheon of the North Central Mass Chamber of Commerce, I went up to visit 1A Auto, which is the largest aftermarket auto parts online distribution company in the country, located in Pepperell, Massachusetts. I give those guys enormous credit for pulling that one off. I couldn't help but stop at Kimball's on my way. And man, is that good ice cream. And I bought a ton of it for the folks at 1A Auto, thereby assuring that I would have a really good time while I was there and be greeted and treated appropriately. So Karen and I basically focus on one big theme, and that one big theme is opportunity. Okay, our view on sort of our role generally is what can we do to help people find opportunity here in the Commonwealth and chase it. I mean, that's really, we've always lived by our wits as a state. We've always been a state that's been able to adapt and adjust to whatever the changing nature of the world around us might be. And we've always thought that our greatest role and our greatest opportunity would be to help others find their opportunity. And that's really translated into four things. One is to work real hard on our schools. The second is to work real hard on building strong communities, because let's face it, nobody makes a decision about how they think things are going in Massachusetts based on how things are going on Beacon Hill. They make it based on how they think things are going in their community, in their home, in their neighborhood. That's how people think about how things are going. The third is to do what we can to build a strong economy and to maintain Massachusetts' competitive position. And that means both strategically investing where it makes sense, but it also means holding the line on the cost of doing business here and continuing to be what I would describe as a good fiscal steward. And then finally, making government work. And I'll talk a little bit more about what I mean by that. But let me start with the education piece. Richard, you kind of gave my speech on that, so if you were all paying attention, I don't need to repeat it. But just for those of you who might not have been paying attention, we have invested in last year's budget $4.6 billion. This year's budget would be more like 4.7 and change in K-12 education here in the Commonwealth, the largest investment the state's ever made. It's about a $300 million increase in K-12 education since we took office. And by the way, as somebody who served on the Board of Education when we began the education reform process in Massachusetts back in the 1990s, I take tremendous satisfaction, and you all should too, in the progress that we've made over the past 25 years. When education reform was passed in Massachusetts, despite the fact that we were a state in which a large proportion of our citizens had gone to college, a large proportion of our citizens had advanced degrees, we were a middle-of-the-road player in K-12 education on the National Education Assessment exams, literally right around 25, which is disappointing, okay? But after education reform and literally 25 years of curriculum frameworks, regular assessment process, and a whole bunch of people pulling and rowing in the same direction, we finished #1 on the National Education Assessment exams in English and math for the past 6 years. And no other state has ever done that, and with one, English or math, and no other state has ever done it in both. And if we were a country, our scores on our science exams would put us in the top 10 globally. This state's made tremendous progress on K-12 education, and that's because everybody on a bipartisan basis has worked enormously hard on this and believed that it is, in fact, one of the things that makes us special. And when U.S. News and World Report picked Massachusetts as the #1 state in the country to live in, first of all, they said it was because we had a great governor and lieutenant governor. But then after that, they said, really terrific education system, really great schools, and a real commitment on a bipartisan basis to staying that way. Sure. We have one of the highest graduation rates we've ever had, four-year graduation rates. It's 87.5%, and the lowest dropout rate we've ever had at 1.9%. And I think in many ways, the work that people have done here is work that needs to continue, and we will continue to build on the success we've seen so far. We've also put some programming in place to help people get from high school to college and beyond. We have a very successful early college program and a dual enrollment program where kids can start going to college while they're in high school. The great part about that is many of our community colleges and state universities partner with local schools in their region, and kids literally can put a full year of college under their belts during their senior year in high school, which takes a big bite out of the cost of going to college. And in addition to that, we've also got a commitment program now that we've developed with all of our community colleges, state universities, and UMass, which makes it possible for a kid to get a four-year degree in Massachusetts for $30,000. And that's before Pell Grants and before scholarships and other financial aid. And I think in many ways, our ability to continue to build on those kinds of initiatives and those kinds of programs in conjunction with our colleagues in higher education will make it possible for kids to get where they need to go. We've also developed, and I'm hoping to build on, a program that will make it possible for some of our Voc Tech schools to be able to start offering associate degrees. So if you're going to a Voc Tech school and you spend your senior year in a co-op program and you're working all the way through that year and you need a two-year degree to take whatever your particular trade is to the next level, you could literally just continue to, on the same runway you've been on, and just stay on that Voc Tech school and collect the associate's degree and just keep running. Speaking of which, I was at Monty Tech today. Is anybody here from Monty Tech? Man, is that a cool place. Sheila Harity is really something. And you all know that because you know about the job she did at Worcester Tech. She's also on our Board of Higher Education. We were very pleased to put her there, and if I could find 40 more of her, I would. But Monty Tech is currently building, and the kids are building it with the faculty, a veterinary clinic that they're doing in conjunction with the Tufts Veterinary School. And it is a gorgeous facility, and it's being built right on their property. They raised a bunch of money privately for it. But these kids are literally building a very complex, terrific facility that's going to end up becoming a real asset to the community and a real asset to the school. And when you walk around there and you talk to the kids who are in the residential carpentry program, or the kids who are in the masonry program, or the kids who are in the electric program, or the kids who are doing HVAC, or the plumbing stuff, the kids who are doing plumbing, man, it is powerfully positive. And I really walked out of there with a little bit of a bounce in my step, having spent some time with some kids who are doing some great stuff. And one of the things I also appreciated is we created the first skills capital grant program where the state invests directly in vocational and technical schools and community colleges and skill building programs to help them upgrade their capacity in areas where they believe there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for kids to get jobs and go to work. And Monty Tech actually applied as they were putting this vet program together to this skill building program, and we actually gave them one of our grants. It was about $350,000 to purchase a lot of the equipment that will ultimately be part of that clinic. But they're hardly the only school in this area that's benefited from them. Assabet Valley's also gotten funds from this, and it's a program that simply never existed, but we started it because so many employers were talking to us about the fact that a lot of the kids coming out of the Voc Tech schools just weren't working on the right equipment, and they needed to upgrade their equipment to be better prepared to actually go to work for some of the employers in their area. And that program is one where we've put $50 million in, and we're just going to continue to invest in these programs because they create real opportunity for kids who come out of those programs, and it's a great way for us to continue to invest through another channel in the future of kids here in the Commonwealth. On the strong community piece, I'm going to be very brief, except I'm going to say a couple things. One is, when I worked in state government, and Karen worked in state government, we had a slightly different view about the relationship between state government and local government. When we worked in local government, it gave us a different appreciation for the way that works. And historically, the way the states typically worked with local communities, if they said, do this, we're not going to give you any money, have a nice day. And we took a slightly different approach to this, where we said, here's a menu of best practices. If you want to work on some of these, pick a few. And we'll give you advice and technical assistance and financial support, and you can take a run at a bunch of these. And if the idea here is, if you want to work with us on them, great. If you don't, that's okay too. But we want to help you get better in areas where you think you need to improve, whether it's downtown development or economic development or environmental policy or recreational policy or safe schools or whatever it happens to be. Got a big, long menu. Just choose the ones you want. And because our view, again, is you build strong communities, good things happen. And we have 351 cities and towns. 285 of them have signed up to work on at least one best practice. We have about 650 best practices overall the communities are working on. We fully expect the success of this program. We're going to end up with all 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts working on something. And the point here is it's an opportunity for us to bring resources and expertise to local communities so that they can do things that will help them get better. And whether it's about, an overlay district for a community or an outline for how they're going to do downtown development or a new plan for zoning, whatever their next industrial park looks like, or whatever it is, our view on this one's really simple. We need to be able to help these folks figure out whatever the way it's going to be that they're going to continue to build on their success and to create economic opportunity, housing opportunity, whatever it might be. And the way we back into this on the other side is through transportation investment, housing investment, and economic development. And Jay Ash, who's the Secretary of Housing and Economic Development, Stephanie Pollock, who's the Secretary of Transportation, and Matt Beaton, Worcester's own Matt Beaton, who's the Secretary of Environmental Affairs. Those three folks spend a lot of time talking to each other about making sure that the investments they make are coordinated and organized around what it is that's going on in different regions of Massachusetts and in different communities. State governments had this historical tendency to balkanize itself and to play these games in individual silos, which means the timing on a lot of stuff doesn't make sense, it's not coordinated, and it doesn't actually give us a chance to maximize what's going on in local government and to find a way to put together packaged financing solutions that solve transportation, economic, downtown development, and housing development initiatives and environmental programs all at the same time. And by having those three folks working together and tying it into the work we're doing around some of this best practice stuff, we are moving stuff far faster than we ever have and doing it in a coordinated way. And I can't tell you how many events I've been at in the past few months with colleagues in local government and private developers and others where people have said, we have never seen state government and local government get from concept to groundbreaking to finished product as fast as you guys are moving us these days. And that is music to my ears because time is money. And if people want to pursue something that makes sense, and we think it makes sense, the faster we get it done, the sooner it actually becomes productive and creates opportunity for people in those communities. The other thing we've done a lot with our colleagues in local government, I would argue that this whole opioid agenda, which Chuck knows as much about this as anybody, but I didn't run for governor to work on the opioid issue. It just found me. Everywhere I went, it didn't matter what community I was in, wherever I was, somebody would come up to me after a town meeting and they'd say, you're a healthcare guy, right? And I'd say, well, sort of, yeah, because of course I don't know what they're going to ask me after that. And they'd say, I got this friend. And then they'd start telling me some story about their friend that involved addiction. And it literally happened everywhere I went. to the point where I finally started bringing it up in my remarks, hoping that would give people permission to bring it up during the Q&A. And people still didn't bring it up directly in the Q&A, but they'd come up to me afterwards, and then they would, instead of saying, I got a friend, they would say, I have a son, I have a daughter, my wife, my husband, my brother, my sister, and then they would tell me their story, and everybody said the same thing: it's been hell. No matter where they were in the process or what was going on, it's been hell, and everybody had their own definition of hell. And I heard this so much, I finally went back to the campaign, and I said, I don't know if I'm just listening for this, or if I'm just showing up in the wrong places, or asking the wrong questions, but I'm telling you, there's something big going on out here. Can you guys go do a little homework on this and just come back and let me know if I'm nuts or not about this? And so folks came back and they said, yep, you're right. There's a lot going on out here. You know, opioid prescribing over 15 years from 2000 to 2014 up like a rocket, overdoses, deaths. And the other thing that showed up was a statistic I'll never forget. 66% of everybody who got admitted to a hospital got an opioid prescription. 18% of those were still on it a year later, and 8% of those were dealing with an addiction. Now, 18% of 66% doesn't sound like a big number, and 8% of that 18 doesn't sound like a big number. But if you think about how many people get admitted to a hospital every day in the United States of America, it starts to sound like a really big number over time. And when I started talking to my colleagues in the medical community, you know, I learned some interesting things. Nobody really ever studied opioid therapy or pain management when they were in medical school, or in dental school, or in nursing school, or in pharmacy school, unless it was something that was a particular interest of theirs. But there was no requirement that anybody study any of this stuff. And a lot of the folks I would talk to who are actually in the field practicing medicine, when I would confront them about this, would say, well, yeah, you know, there's not a lot of great guidance out there. Maybe we're overdoing this stuff. And I remember going and visiting some of my colleagues that I knew who worked in hospital ERs. And I said, not for nothing, but I'm hearing about this everywhere I go. I mean, it seems like there's a ton of data out here about overdoses and deaths. Oh yeah, it's you know, pick your favorite word. It's a calamity, it's an avalanche. And I said to people, well, you guys knew I was running for governor, and I've known you for years. I'm a healthcare guy. How come nobody ever said anything to me about this? Well, you know, we're busy and there's a lot going on, and people don't really want to talk about this stuff. Well, screw that. It's time to start talking about it. So we started talking about it. We started talking about it. We put a task force together, and we came up with a series of recommendations around prevention, education, intervention, treatment, and recovery. And over the course of the past couple years, we completely revamped the prescription monitoring program in Massachusetts, made it much easier to use, and started to provide clinicians and prescribers with data that they could actually do something with. Every medical school, dental school, nursing school, and pharmacy school in Massachusetts now has a core requirement. You can't graduate unless you take and pass a course in opioid therapy and pain management. You can't, if you're a prescriber, you can't get your license renewed without taking and passing a course in opioid therapy and pain management. We are putting people who are addiction specialists on our board of registrations in medicine, nursing, pharmacy, and dentistry. And that's kind of, and doing a whole bunch of other things with respect to the way we educate teachers and parents and kids and coaches and all the rest. And that's kind of the prevention education piece of this. And we've actually made progress. After 15 years of every single year, prescriptions, overdoses, and deaths going up, between Q1 17 and Q1 16, for the first time in 15 years, we saw a decline in prescriptions, overdoses, and deaths over last year's data, which is a which is a big positive statement. We've also got, we've made major investments in treatment and recovery, 50% increase on our side over the course of the past couple of years, and are continuing to chase a whole series of reforms with regard to best practice and what works and all the rest. And we've actually managed to structure some public-private arrangements with a number of our colleagues in the healthcare world. And this this does seem to have people's attention at this point. People are more comfortable talking about it, and I think it's out in the open in a way it wasn't before. But from my point of view, this was not so. Yes, it's a healthcare issue, but from my point of view, it was also an issue about building strong communities, because so much of this has just ripped through so many communities around the Commonwealth, and it's an absolute shame that it took so long to make this a front and center issue that we sort of faced head on and chased and dealt with. And I do want to say one other thing about this whole notion of making government work, and then I'll be happy to take some questions. Richard mentioned the snowstorms. It snowed for 28 of 30 days, in case any of you would like to remember that. I literally thought my job was to shovel snow, that is going to be all I was ever going to be about as governor. Why did I want this job? And I came home one night and I said, I can't believe it. It's still snowing out. This is like, and somebody said to me, well, that's what happens when a Republican gets elected governor in Massachusetts. It's like hell freezing over. Instead, it was Massachusetts freezing over. But the T broke. And it broke for a whole bunch of reasons. But I would argue that the main reason it broke is it simply hadn't been aggressively managed in a forward-looking and strategic way for a long time. And that's no indictment about anybody who might have come before us. That's just the way it was. And we have constantly been, for the past 2 years, pulling this thing into the 21st century, introducing it to the internet, introducing it to version, like the most latest version of a lot of the tech platform software that it had never seen and had never used, getting it out of issuing paper cash vouchers for every time it bought anything, getting it comfortable with the idea that reconciling inventory to purchases is a good thing and that you should probably do it on a regular basis. Introducing it to the state's contracts, which in many cases were dramatically less expensive than what the T was paying for things. I mean dramatically. This year, the T will save $4 million on diesel fuel costs on its ferry services because it's going to buy its diesel fuel off the state's blanket, which is 60 cents a gallon cheaper than the T's contract. Just item after item after item of what most people would call sort of standard operating procedures, standard business practice, modern approaches to the way you do business. Over and over and over again, we're just bringing these to the T. And as a result, what should have been, or what was projected to be a $330 million operating deficit in the fiscal year that starts in July is going to be $25 million. And that's with an improvement in service over the course of the past couple years. The other thing I'll say about the T is we are in the process of investing what will probably be somewhere between $4 and $5 billion in its core infrastructure over the course of the next 4 or 5 years. Signals, switches, tracks, third rails, power systems, electronics. All this stuff is 50, 60, and 70 years old. I don't know what people were spending their money on before, but it wasn't on the stuff that actually determines the capacity of the system to perform. And I get the fact that it's not sexy and we won't get to cut a lot of ribbons and all the rest. But if you want to create a modern 21st century public transportation system, you got to invest in the core system. And that's exactly what we're going to do. And you get out 3 years from now, and it will be a dramatically different system than it is today. New cars for the green line and the red line and the orange line will all start to show up. I mean, during those storms, back in February of 2015, I had somebody say to me, the T broke, world's coming to an end. And I said, you know how old those cars are on the red line? And they said, no, how old? I said, they were running on the blizzard of 76. It wasn't funny. True, but not funny. And the other thing Karen and I believe when we talk about a government that works is one that understands that democracy is democracy. It's supposed to be a little messy, supposed to be a little complicated. Nobody's supposed to get their own way. Minority voices are supposed to be heard. You're You're supposed to get the fact that not everybody always agrees, and the point here is to try and come up with the best answers and the best solutions while being hard on the issues and soft on the people. My mom, as many people know, God rest her soul, was a Democrat. My dad is a Republican. Dinner table in my house growing up was a free-for-all like no other place you could imagine. I have friends who literally would not come to my house for dinner because they were afraid of having to sit there and participate in these conversations. But I learned a lot from listening to my parents, and even though they canceled each other's votes out for 60 years, they had conversations, and they listened to each other, and I learned a lot from that. And I believe in that. I think that's the way it's supposed to work. And I actually, my mom was too sick to vote in 14, which was just a shame. But she was not too sick to vote in 10. And I said, geez, Mom, so this is going to be the first time you and Dad, vote for the same person. It's pretty exciting after 60 years. And this is no joke. She said to me, well, son, it is a secret ballot. So Karen and I, we come at this with a point of view that that our job is to find a way to work collaboratively with our colleagues in state government and local government and the private sector. We're supposed to be able to maintain positive personal and professional relationships with people, and we don't engage in a lot of the really hot character assassination, partisan rhetoric that dominates the political dialogue in so many other places. And we both are very grateful that a lot of people in state government, a lot of people in local government, and a lot of people just generally like that and want to work with us and want to focus on the work. And somebody said to me the other day, you guys are like the no drama administration. And I said, that's exactly right. We don't want to be about the noise. We want to be about the work. And as we think about where we're going from here, these opportunities to invest in transportation, invest in local communities, and invest in opportunity and finding ways to create strong economies from one end of the Commonwealth to the other, and give people the skills and the elements of success that they need to be successful. That's what we're going to be all about. And we're not going to spend a lot of time worrying about the letter at the end of people's names. We're just going to find people who want to work with us and get stuff done and take it from there. And again, I appreciate the chance to be here, and I look forward to the Q&A. Thank you.